All right, today we are over halfway done with this unit on surface area and volume, and I really believe that volume tends to be easier, especially when it comes to the formulas. Volume is the amount of space an object takes up. So for example, if you've got your Diet Coke or your Mountain Dew, the volume would be how many ounces are in that cup. Or if you're talking about maybe a sandbox, how much sand can fill up a sandbox. So when we're doing volume, the general formula for volume, the volume of a prism is the product of the base area and the height. So in other words, the formula would be big B times H, and big B has not changed in terms of what it means. It means the base area. And H hasn't changed, it's the height of that prism. So when we go and look at the volume of a cylinder, it really is the same thing. It's still the base area, it just happens that your base in a cylinder is a circle. So in other words, big B is equal to pi r squared, because that's the base formula for area of a circle times its corresponding height. And again, I just want to point out all of these formulas are on your formula sheet. So if we go down to cylinder, you're just going to the third column. There's pi r squared times H. Here's the formula for the prism, which is big B times H. So again, if you look at these formulas compared to surface area, they're much simpler. Mainly because in the surface area you are adding up all of the different sides, and the volume, if you notice, we're just multiplying. So that should make it a little bit easier, and I'm just noticing the glare for you as well. All right, so let's go take a look at a few examples. So the first thing I want you to do is find the base of, or the area of that base. So I see the base as this rectangle right here, and I'm just going to pull out that base so you see what I'm talking about. It has a length of 24 and it has a width of 20. So my base area would be 24 times 20, which is 480. And the height of my prism is how tall it is, which is 10. And now you have the two things that you need. You have the base area and you have the height. So we end up with 480 times 10, which is 4,800. And here we are talking centimeters cubed. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Again, it says find the volume of the prism. This is what we need to recognize. And again, I should have mentioned up here, let's review some basic vocabulary. The particular shape of this prism is a rectangular prism because the base was a rectangle. Now, what we need to notice on this one, the base is not that rectangle, the base is actually that triangle. Remember, the bases are congruent and they're parallel. So this is called a triangular prism. So let's go ahead and pull out that triangle. Now in the warm-up, we talked about several different ways to find the area of that triangle, and I'll go through both of those ways again. One of the ways is to recognize we could use 1/2 BC times the sine of A. If you recall, B and C are two of your sides, which are both 8, and A is the angle in between them. Well, if this triangle is equilateral, that means it's equal angular, which means each of these angles would be 60 degrees. So I have one of the angles in between. Typing that in, 1/2 times 8 times the sine of 60, and we end up with that base area of 27.7. Now, if you don't like that formula, or you're thinking, I am not going to remember that formula, and again, that one is, formula is on your formula sheet. Let's talk about your other option. We have 1/2 base times height. If you take a look, your base in this particular triangle is 8. What you don't have is the height, but we can find that on our own. And I'm just going to redraw that triangle down here. So if this is 8 and this is 60, and I drop this in, we've actually created a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So we're going from the short leg to the long leg. So if you look at your formula sheet, short to long, I would multiply this by radical 3. And again, when we type all of that in, 1/2 times 8 times 4 times radical 3, we should be getting the same that I did up here, and I do. I get 27.7. So as I said, it's totally up to you. You can either use this formula or you can stick with your 1/2 base times height. Finally, we need the height of the prism. Remember, that's how tall that prism is. In other words, when I stand it on that triangular base, what is the height from one base to the other, which in this case is 10. Now I'm ready to plug into my formula. 27.7 times 10, we get 277 inches cubed. Okay, moving on to the next one. Again, let's review what the shape of this one is. It looks like there are 6 sides, so this would be called again a hexagonal prism. So we need to go find the area of that hexagon. Now, if you recall, that's a regular polygon, and what we did to find that was we found the area of just one of those triangles and we multiplied it by the number of triangles. So in this case, it would be 6 triangles, which is 6 1/2 base times height. I've got the base of that triangle is 8. What I don't have is the height of that triangle. So this is really what I'm trying to find in here. So we've got 8, we're going to drop in that height. We need to go find that angle so that I know if I'm going to use a special right triangle or I'm going to use some trig. So to find that angle, we're doing 360 divided by 6 divided by 2, and we end up with a 30-degree angle. So that means I can use the special right triangles. I've got that small leg is 4. To go from the small leg to the long leg, we multiply by radical 3. If I wanted to leave this in radical form, we could just cast off the radical 3. We've got 6 triangles, so 6 times 1/2 times the base times the height. I get 96 radical 3. Now let's go back and look at the prism. How tall is that prism? That would be this height right here, which is 10. So finally finishing it, we have 96 radical 3 times the height of 10. We get 960 radical 3, or again, if they wanted it as a decimal, we can go ahead and do that. And I've got 1,662.7 centimeters cubed. Okay, let's move on to the volume of the cylinder. And we discussed the cylinder is similar to the prism. The only difference is the shape is a circle. So if I pull out that base, it looks as though my radius is 8. Our formula for area of a circle is pi r squared. So we've got 64 pi for the area of the circle, and then I'm multiplying it by the height of that cylinder, which again I can see to be 9. We've got 9 here. So 64 pi times 9. If they wanted me to leave it in pi, I'd just do 64 times 9. We get 576 pi. If I'm asked to take it to a decimal, I will multiply that by pi, and we end up with 1,809.6, and again, this is feet cubed. All right, let's go and add on just one more example. So all of these were pretty straightforward in terms of I was given the dimensions and I had to go and find the volume. Well, let's suppose instead we are asked to work backwards. Okay, so let's look at the first example. We've been given a cylinder. We are told we have a volume of 588 pi. We have a height of 12 and we have to find the radius. So as always, we're going to start by writing down that formula. We've got volume equals pi r squared h. We're looking for the radius, which means I should have the height and I should have the volume, and I do. We've got 588 pi equals pi r squared times 12. And I want to get r squared by itself. So to start, I'm going to divide by 12 pi. The pi's will cancel out. 588 divided by 12 gives me 49 is equal to r squared. I need to know what r is. I take the square root, and we end up with r is equal to 7. So not too bad, because again, I was given 2 of the pieces. I just had to go and find the third. Let's go and look at one more that might be similar to that. Okay, I drew out one last one for you. I drew out a triangular prism. Again, it's triangular because the 2 bases of the triangles. I've been given the volume as 480 inches cubed, and I'm looking for the height. Again, let's start with our formula. We've got volume equals big B times H. I've been given a volume of 480. I'm looking for the height of the prism. That's what I don't know, which means I should be able to find big B. Remember, big B is the area of this base, which happens to be a triangle. The formula for area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. Now, don't get these the same. They're not. This is the height of the prism. This is just the height of that particular triangle. So let's start substituting in. We've got 1/2 times 8 times 6 times h. So half of 8 times 6 would be a 24h. Finally, we can divide by 24, and we end up with a height of 20, and that would be 20 inches. Okay, we are done with the notes. I would encourage you, as I'm noticing not too many people are getting on, to do the notes via Zoom. So we're going to switch those Zoom sessions again to homework. So try and get the notes completed and hop on any one of the Zoom sessions so we can work on an assignment with you as well. Thanks so much. After this, we have, I believe, 2 more lessons, and we are done with this final unit. So hang in there.